Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Get ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. Today's date is the 6th of November. It happens to be a Thursday, and this is the Brad and John Show. There's only one difference, is there's no John. He's taking a few days off to do some work around his home, and we have guest hosts sitting in. Today, it is Steve Ehlmann. Good morning, Steve. You hear me okay?
Yeah, Brad, I can.
John is, like I said, normally we do the Brad and John Show. The first segment of this is where John does his top three. So I brought in, and give you a full disclosure here, we're doing all three of the candidates who are in the running for the 2026 election of the county executive. We had on Tuesday, we had Bill Eigel, Steve Ehlmann today, and tomorrow it's Jason Law. Steve, I'm really happy you came with me this morning, and to the point where you and I will do this in two segments. First segment, we'll do the John's top three, but it'll be Steve's top three. It'd be interesting to hear what you have to say. And then in the second segment, we'll get down to business about your background and moving forward with the campaign. Sound okay to you, John, Steve?
Yeah, sounds good, Brad.
I get so used to saying John, so correct me from time to time. Are you ready for your top three, Steve?
My top three,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I've got more than three, but we'll do the top three.
I got to do the official stuff here. We bring in this guy. You can hear this guy right here?
I'm Casey Kasem.
You know who that guy is, Casey Kasem, right?
Yeah, I know Casey.
And we start off with...
In third place.
And that's your cue for number three.
For number three, the first one I'll do.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead and do your third one. Three. We count it down 3, 2, 1.
Move up from the... Okay. First thing we'll talk about is the budget. And as the... county charter requires at 5 o'clock this afternoon, we have to submit a budget to the county council, and we will be doing that. And it's always a challenge, and it's particularly a challenge this year. One of the reasons it's a challenge this year is the fact that we have a lot of funds that are restricted. Okay. You remember this, Brad. Over the years, people, when you ask them to raise their taxes, you tell them we're only going to use it for this purpose, and that helps get it passed, right? But the problem is we have several funds like that. One is road and bridges. Another one is dispatch and alarm, our parks fund, our transportation money. All of those things, however much we have in those funds, that's where we have to use it. So we can't, like, one year, take a little more here and put it over there. So that's why budgeting at the county level is such a challenge. The other challenge, of course, is that we get absolutely zero money from property taxes in the general fund. Okay, and of course the general fund is not these things I mentioned, but all the other things, salaries and just running the day-to-day operation of the county. So we have to rely entirely on sales taxes for that, and obviously, with relying on sales taxes, I'm already beginning to wish people Merry Christmas and hoping that they'll shop in St. Charles County, because that's where we get our money. Only 5.6% of the revenue that the county uses in these other special funds comes from property taxes. And, of course, a couple of years ago, remember when everybody's car, the personal property tax, went way sky high? And we went ahead and froze the amount of money that we received from personal property taxes. And we've instituted that now for 3 years in a row. So we are, like I say, only 5.6% of our money comes from property taxes, but we're trying to get that number down even further. Now, the interesting thing, and I'm very proud of the fact that we've not had to raise taxes in the 20 years that I've been in county government. But we did ask the people 3 years ago, I believe, to go ahead and institute a tax on marijuana, a county tax. And that was basically bringing in $2 million per year, which is interesting. That means that the marijuana industry just in St. Charles County was bringing in $67 million a year.
Wow.
But anyway, they went ahead and challenged that, went all the way to the Missouri Supreme Court. And just yesterday, we got the final decision on our motion to reconsider, which they denied. So we are now without that tax. And the problem there is we have one more year of ARPA money that we're using to go ahead and pay for 14 SRO, school resource officers, in the elementary schools in the county. And we're going to have, next year, we're going to have to find some money to replace that $2 million that is now going to go back to the marijuana dispensaries.
Steve,
so that's kind of where we are on budget. One important thing, and I hope your listeners already have heard about this in April, and we've already put it on the ballot because the statute required us to. They're going to be able to vote on freezing all property taxes the same way seniors have already been able to freeze theirs. And that's going to be an interesting vote in April. The big problem with it, well, it's not a problem for county government because we really don't rely that much on property taxes. But the problem is a lot of people think it's unconstitutional. And what I'm really afraid of is, and I think it's going to be very popular, probably will pass. And then I'm afraid the courts are going to come in and say, whoa, wait a minute here. So I'm hopeful that the legislature might be able to clean up some of the problems when it meets in January.
Steve,
but I don't know how I am on time, and I don't know how much I've got on each of the three topics, but that's kind of what I have to say on that, Brad. Any questions?
Well, let me go back to something you mentioned. The marijuana tax, that was what they called the stacked tax, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And essentially that was finally finished yesterday, did you say?
Yeah, they ruled against us a couple months ago. We filed a motion for them to reconsider, which I guess they looked at it hard because it took them quite a while to get back and say, no, we're going to stick with our original decision. See, there's the problem with that whole thing, Brad, is we've been putting things in the Constitution that really should go in the state statutes. If this had been a statute that people had passed, we could go to Jeff City and get this clarified. Now, it doesn't mean we'd win, but we could at least get this clarified. There are no other county taxes in the statutes anywhere at any time in our history in which only the unincorporated parts of a county were taxed. If it's a county tax, it has been applied throughout the county, the incorporated and unincorporated areas. And if they had followed precedent, that's what they would have continued to do on this. But since it was in the Constitution, they look strictly at the language that was used. We think it could have been interpreted a different way, but they interpret it to say, no, the county can only tax in the unincorporated areas.
And that was the sticking point to it. If I understand it correctly, the way it was sort of interpreted was that the municipalities got 3% tax, and then the county got 3% tax. So if you bought marijuana like in St. Peter's, you'd pay the 3% St. Peter's tax and the 3% county tax, but they essentially overruled the county tax. But if a marijuana place was an unincorporated St. Charles County, they would pay you the 3% tax. Is that pretty much the way it's worked out now?
That's the way it works out. But in St. Charles County, we have very little commercial property that's not taken into cities because they take it in to get the sales tax revenue themselves, and they can bring it into the city because they have to go to the voters, and if they need the majority of the people to say no in an area before they can annex it, and if it's commercial property, nobody lives there to vote.
Interesting. I forgot about that. And isn't that sort of the way that happened? I don't know if you know the St. Louis County history, but isn't that the sort of the way that Earth City ended up being the way it is? Because
yeah, there was actually a case involving St. Charles and Earth City, and all this annexation stuff was it was a big issue 25 years ago when I was in the state legislature, and before that, the cities could bring in new areas, even though the majority of the people in that area were against it, and the entire delegation got together and changed that. So now they can't force you to come into a city, but if nobody lives there, they can.
And wasn't that the deal? Wasn't St. Charles City trying to annex Earth City? Wasn't that part of the deal?
I think that was the deal. That was even before I got the legislature.
Which is interesting because it's on the opposite side of the river and it's a different county. But
yeah, I know that not from personal experience, but from doing a lot of historical research.
Yeah. Okay. Now we ready for number 2? We'll move along to number 2 here.
Yeah, we're ready for number 2.
Okay. Here's Casey with number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
And no surprise here, transportation. That has been the key to our last 50, 60 years of growth in St. Charles County. We would not have 422,000 people today if it were not for MoDOT and them maintaining the state transportation system. When I first got into politics, the issue was whether, building the Page Avenue Bridge. After that, it was the Page Avenue Extension. Can you imagine what it would be like to live in St. Charles County today without those two things? And the need continues. And the problem is, over the last 10 or 15 years, the buying power of MoDOT decreased. And this is something people I think need to really understand. I hate it when they call it the gas tax. It's really a per gallon user fee. Okay. If you don't use it, if you don't drive, you don't pay anything. If you drive a lot, you pay a lot. So it's a per gallon user fee. But unlike at the grocery store, when the cost goes up, the taxes go up. When the cost of gasoline goes up, MoDOT gets the same amount of money because it's so much per gallon, whether that gas costs $1 or $4. So at the same time, our cars have been more and more fuel efficient over the last 20 years, which means the buying power of the state transportation commission just kept going down and down. And the problem is they responded to the rest of the state in a way that may have helped the 100 counties in the state that haven't grown in decades, but really penalized the growing counties. What they did is said, we're going to take all the money we have and spend it on maintenance first. And if we have any left over, we're going to use it for expansion or building new roads. And like I said, that was a terrible decision as far as St. Charles County was concerned, because we not only need maintenance, we needed new roads. We needed the third phase of Page. And we weren't going to get it if we had to wait for MoDOT to pay for it. So you may remember we got together. We got a fourth of the money came from the county road board. Another fourth came from all the cities and counties working together to get one chunk of federal money down East-West Gateway. And then MoDOT paid for half of it. And as a result, we've got phase 3 of Page. We did that on several other projects. We got money right now in the curve out in Wentzville. We spent $191 million of county road board funds to support the state road system. And the fact of the matter is, if we hadn't, I can't imagine what it would be like today. We probably would have a whole lot fewer people, and the people that are here would be in terrible traffic congestion. So the good news is the MoDOT now has some money, and they're spending it out in St. Charles County. People are very, very aware. They're putting the third lane on I-64 out to 70. They're putting a third lane from on 70 all the way out to Forestell and eventually Warrenton and eventually all the way across the state. They're taking that. They're taking that whole interchange out there, and it hasn't been changed much since 1951, and redoing it. And I've been saying this for years. St. Louis is the gateway to the west, but if you want to go west from St. Louis during rush hour, you got squeeze under a railroad bridge on 2 lanes of traffic. So they are building a new railroad bridge that will allow 5, not 2 lanes of traffic, to go under it. And this is going to be a tremendous boost, I think, for economic development in the western part of St. Charles County and in Warren County and surrounding areas as well.
I know.
So that's kind of where we are on that.
I know the Wentzville curve has been a big thing for you for a long time. I've heard you speak about that at many events.
Yeah, I think we actually, the highway department actually bought right away for that 20 years ago.
Yeah,
and it's been very difficult working. Oh, we had money ready to go, and they delayed it because of COVID, because they weren't sure how much revenue they were going to get. It's just been one problem after another, but they're working on it now, and I ask people just to be patient. The other issue right now is Highway N. That's where a lot of the growth in the county is occurring. Our hope is to get it into the STIP. That's the State Transportation Improvement Plan next year. It's been approved as a Great Streets project down East-West Gateway. So we're working on expanding Highway N, but doing it in such a way that we don't create another Highway K. More of a rural divided highway that will fit into that neighborhood. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about, if I have time, Brad, is the long range transportation plan down East-West Gateway. This is an area people don't read about in the paper or hear about on the radio or see on TV. At East-West Gateway, 8 years ago, we did a long range transportation plan. At that point, there was a executive order. It was originally issued by Obama, but wasn't changed by Trump, that required us, when we're deciding how to spend our funds, to be aware of diversity, inclusion, and equal protection. Okay? Now, everybody's for equal protection, right? I mean, that's our greatest accomplishment, I think, in my generation, my father's generation, and that is that we have a meritocracy, and we look at individuals, not as groups. But after January 21, the Biden administration changed that executive order, talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And at first, people thought equity, well, I guess that's the same as equal opportunity. Let me tell you, it wasn't. In the long-range plan, basically said, we're going to not look at individuals, we're going to look at groups. And if some groups, and including racial groups, if certain racial groups haven't gotten as much as they should have, or if the highway department has taken actions that have affected them in a negative sort of way, we're going to give those groups additional money. And basically for the last 4 years, that's what we did, and that was what was in our long-range transportation plan. The word, when the Biden people left and the Trump people came in, they sent a list of words that they thought were red flags, and one of the words was equity. And I took our long-range transportation plan, and the word equity shows up 63 times. Okay, so because of that, and just an example, they've argued that back in the 1960s when we did Highway I-44 through the city of St. Louis, we went through a black neighborhood and disrupted the neighborhood. Maybe that's true. I'm not sure. If it is, we need to make sure we don't do those sorts of things in the future. But what they're saying is now we need to make it up to those folks as a group. And they're talking about equality, not of the individual, but of particular groups of people. And we're going to change all that in the long-range transportation plan at East-West Gateway in the next year.
Is that no longer mandated by the federal government under the Trump administration? Did they pull that out?
Yeah, they revoked that. They revoked that executive order. So we're no longer required to look at equity when it comes to funding. And, because of that, the city of St. Louis has gotten a lot higher number per person when they're losing population than St. Charles County has when it's been growing. And that doesn't make any sense to me. Transportation is a big part of our economic development system, and we need to make sure that that we're using those transportation funds where they can actually make the region grow.
Steve, we're going to take a break here. We'll be back, and of course, the question that I have to ask, you know which one's coming. That's coming up next.